Cool. Okay, so who are you and what do you do?
Okay. Hi, my name's Chris McCrory, and I'm a record producer and a songwriter. Um, I got into recording when I was a teenager, just to record my own songs. I just wanted to learn how to do it myself after being in studios and stuff, and from that, it kind of sort of blossomed into a job where I ended up kind of recording other people, and now that's basically my job full time. Has
Excellent.
been. Yeah, yeah, has been for a good 5 or 6 years now, I think. Yeah, maybe even more.
Wow. So you were a young teenager who decided that, yeah, you want to record your own songs, and then that fell into obviously your career. So did you pursue any music education at all, or did you just
I
how did that start?
started playing guitar when I was about 11, I think. I had guitar lessons when I was in primary school. Like me and my pal Paul used to, like, we were the only two people in my primary school that played guitar, so we used to just sort of hang out with each other all the time and write wee songs about our teachers and shit like that. Um, I mean, so I done studied music in school, and I had guitar lessons, and then after I left school, sort of I really didn't like high school, to be honest. I didn't really enjoy it very much. And I left school sort of halfway through 6th year. Had a lot
Mm.
of problems with like mental health and stuff like that. And although I think because of that, that's kind of why I sort of threw myself into music, because for me that was the thing that made me feel good, and that was a way for me to sort of express how I was feeling as a teenager and how I was feeling in school. So I left school at 17, halfway through 6th year, and done started a sound production course, done like NC sound, like right, the very very basics. Just started learning that. um Really really loved it. um I think around the same time I was just kind of working on my own music, and starting playing in different bands and stuff like that. And I met some people that ran a studio called the Green Door Studio. It's still open, and they run really good courses. And I ended up on one of those courses when I was like 18. Through that course, I recorded my first album properly, and met a guy, the other engineer there, who I sort of became his assistant for a few years, and he kind of taught me the ropes of like recording and stuff like that. And at the same time, I was kind of studying. I then I continued my like college studies, done like an HNC and an HND in sound production. Like, and all the while I was sort of recording like anyone that would let me, basically, and my own music as much as possible. So I just sort of really threw myself into it, from the age of 18. And yeah, then it kind of became it. It started off me just kind of doing like wee cash in hand things here and there for people, and a couple of those things got put out on. There was a local label called Fuzzkill Records, and I became sort of pally with Ross, the guy that ran that label. And then I ended up kind of, and he was just a guy in Glasgow that just started the label, just decided to start his own record label, put bands out, and I ended up being the sort of guy that would record a lot of the stuff on that label. And some of those bands did okay and did quite well even, and my own band did okay. And it just sort of snowballed from there, really. And now it's just kind of what I'm known for, and sort of what I do. So I'm really, really lucky. But again, it's just, I really just threw myself into it as a teenager.
Excellent. Yeah, and I suppose that's music, isn't it? You end up networking with some of the most really sort of interesting people when
Yeah.
things just start up and happen almost out the blue, but at the same time it was heading in that direction. So it's really
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, like, yeah, if I think back, it's like, if I didn't end up on that course at Green Door, yeah, I don't know what I'd be doing. Maybe I would just be doing exactly the same thing, because I was still recording anyway and I was still studying it. I just think that was like kind of my real into like the sort of Glasgow music scene, because I met people, you know, the people that Emily and Stuart and Sam, they were the people that started the Green Door and were running it. They were like in their mid to late 30s and they'd been involved in music for forever, and they were really passionate about DIY music and people just doing it for themselves. So they kind of like, they just kind of, you know, they introduced you to people and they just kind of showed you how it was done and how to do it for yourself. And it was I was just quite fortunate to meet those people at the same time that I was getting the kind of technical side of it taught to me at college and stuff, you know, because I think these courses and stuff, the college courses and things like that, they're really good and they're really useful, but I think ultimately you have to really be doing it for yourself as well, and you have to be doing it as much as you possibly can outside the educational settings, because the nature of the work, or the type of work that it is that you have to kind of make it happen for yourself. I mean, that was my route. Like, I know certainly in the past, you know, traditionally, I guess maybe 20 or 30 years ago now, you could maybe get a degree and walk into a job at like the BBC or one of these studios, but now it's really, you really just have to make it happen for yourself.
I suppose that's what makes our industry almost harder sometimes, because not only are you keeping on top of your studies and education, that's not enough. You need to be doing everything else out with and essentially putting everything that you're learning into practice.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Totally. So you were obviously working as a producer as well. Can you talk me through some of the bands you've been involved with, maybe even some sort of highlights from each one and maybe what you've learned?
From bands that I've recorded?
From maybe bands that you've actually been in as a musician.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, done some really great things. I've been in a band the last sort of 5 or 6 years called Catholic Action, and we've put 2 albums out on labels all over the world, and we've toured around Europe, we've toured in America a few times, we've toured the UK a lot, believe it or not, we've actually made money from it. We've had our songs used in, like, the biggest one was probably one of our tracks was used in a Mercedes advert, which meant that I could buy all the equipment that you can basically see behind you. I mean, I started slowly piecing together equipment when I was younger, like just any sort of weird cheap bits. You don't need equipment. It's not important. It is a total luxury kind of thing. But anyway, yeah. So I've been in that band. We toured around a lot. Been in another band called Casual Sex before that, where I was the drummer. Again, we put records out on Moshi Moshi, and we toured in America again we supported Franz Ferdinand on that tour, which was really cool. Some other great tours I've been on with Catholic Action was we toured Europe and the UK with Dead Kennedys, played with Teenage Fan Club, Swim Deep, and there's loads of stuff that, I mean, I can't quite recall it all right now, but we've done a lot of really amazing things, and we've got to travel a lot. We've got to meet a lot of people, which has been great. I've met so many people that are now sort of my good friends, or even, I met people that I ended up, together with for a long time through, touring and just traveling about. And again, like you said earlier, we were chatting before, the kinds of people that you meet when you do this type of thing is amazing. There's actually a really good quote that I heard just as I was starting out, and it really stuck with me. Like, even though it's like there was the backstory was the young girl who turned to her granddad, when she was young, and said, "Oh, I want to be an artist when I grow up." And he was like, "Okay, that's cool. You might not be rich, but you'll have a rich life." And it's so true. Like, I mean, even though for a long time you don't have, you might not ever have a kind of regular or stable income, or you might end up filthy rich overnight. That's besides the point. but no matter what, you do have a rich life. You get to make art every day, and you get to meet people that are passionate and who make art as well every day. And that's, I'm really glad I sort of spent my 20s doing that and not being in an office, thankfully doing something that I dislike.
Okay, so here is a question. So with your music projects, um, band-wise, or you being in a band, did you have an artist manager, and how did you go about getting an artist manager if you did?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we had an artist manager eventually. It just sort of happened. It was just someone that I knew. And I kind of messaged them for some advice. Like, we had some songs up on SoundCloud and stuff, and then we got approached by a couple of agents and a couple of different producers, and I was kind of like, what do I do? So I sort of, because this guy that managed us first used to manage the old band Casual Sex that I was in. Like, the other, like, I mean, I was quite lucky. So Casual Sex, like, I was like 18, 19, 20 till about 22, and I was by far and away the youngest member of the band. Like, everyone else, I think the next youngest was like 29.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I kind of had this, I just knew a lot of people. So through them, who were all kind of sort of established themselves in the industry kind of thing. So when I started Catholic Action, I had a sort of network of people that I could just ask for advice. So when I asked this guy, I was like, man, what do I do? Like, I don't really know what to say, like, to this agent, because obviously it's a big deal, it's cool. It was like a really good agent got in touch, and I was like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't want to say something stupid and like blow the chance. So fortunately, he spoke to the agent for us and got the agent on board, and then I was like, okay, well, you're our manager. And that was kind of it. But I would say that, like, it's really important to, there are two things about managers and things like that. Is one, really think about what it is they're actually going to do for you and what it is you need them to do, and can they do that. It has to be like a two-way thing. You both have to be getting, there's a give and take. Do you know what I mean? You have to know what you want, and they have to know what you want. Do you know what I mean? There has to be an understanding. And two, this is what bands always do when they get a manager or a label, is they go, oh, okay, I've got a manager or I've got a label, I don't need to do any work anymore. And that's like, it's so far from the truth. It's like, it's almost like you should think of it as, okay, now you've got a manager, now you've got a label, that's going to facilitate me to have a bigger reach and to do things that I couldn't do before. If now I should really step on the gas, and start start putting the effort in. So yeah, keep that in mind. Like, if you do get a manager or a label, like, that's not the time to like put your feet up and rest on your laurels and pretend you've made it. It's like that now is when you should really get the finger out and start working on it, because it's like now you've just got another member of the team that can help you, so you can just do more things, but you have to put the effort in for those things to happen.
That's exactly it. A lot of bands do end up getting comfortable, and not pulling out. You're totally right. Yeah, like anytime you speak to a lot of young people and stuff, it's still like a sort of common perception that artist managers are the bad guys. They go in there and rip bands off, because historically not the best, especially when you consider the sort of 80s and 90s and all the horror stories from the music industry. But like you said, it's just an extra team member that's there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the important thing is, like, if they're it's like, well, you need to ask yourself another two things. One, do you think your artist manager is intelligent? And two, just one thing, do you trust them? Like, and do they have your best interests at heart? Because I mean, that's the thing. It's like people did get ripped off back in the day because they worked with people that they didn't trust, or that, you know, were sneaky, or, you know, whatever. So it's really important that you should treat them almost like another band member, in a way that they should be in a kind of inner circle, and communication should be good, because otherwise there's not really much point, you know, to it.
That's exactly it. So even if we hone in on sort of specifically, so what did day to day, or in general, what did you allow your artist manager to do with your projects? Because obviously it varies from band to band. Various bands are like, please do everything for me, I don't know what I'm doing, to like we have a discussion where like, you handle important decisions, we will run everything, like we run our own social media, or you know, it sort of varies from project to project. But specifically, what sort of things did you have your artist manager help you with?
Our artist manager helped us with sort of dealing with the rest of the industry. Like, they would sort of, I would always be on board, I would always be on the emails or be in the meetings for the most part if it was an important one. But they would be the ones that would be speaking to agents, and they would be the ones speaking to labels, and they would kind of organize tours and things like that. Like, I would say we would come up as a band, we would come up with what we would like to do, and then they would sort of help facilitate that for us. You know, they wouldn't necessarily decide what we were doing. We would have to give them an input, you know, be it like, oh, by the way, we've made this album, this is what we want to do with it. You know, it wouldn't just be like, you know, I think the common misconception again with managers, certainly for, you know, like a rock band or an indie band, I'm sure depending on the type of music you're doing and what kind of world you go into, it's probably a totally different story. You know, if you're like Lewis Capaldi level, like pop stuff, or if you're just like a sort of garagey, like local indie band thing, you know, it's unlikely that your indie band manager is going to come and tell you to get a different haircut and dress a different way. But maybe, you know, on the poppier end of things, there is going to be more input. I think a general rule of thumb that I've learned is that, like, the more money that's involved in your band, the more people will want to say, you know, people, part of the team will maybe want to say, or the more that's right, you know, the more money that's riding on it, it becomes more intense, I think. But it's so again, it's really, really important that whoever you do work with, that you trust them and that you're on the same page as them musically. Like, it's important that they understand what it is you're trying to do, you know, because that's really, really important. Things can be mismanaged, and you just have to, I mean, anyone that you're working with as a band, this applies as a producer as well. Like, it's important for me to actually, before I work with a band, to figure out what it is they actually want to do, or what they'd like to do, and, you know, and how you're going to get them there. So there's no point in having a manager that's trying to get you played on Radio 1 when what you really want to be making is music that might be played on Radio 6 or something like that. You know, things can be pushed. The band might be going this way and the management might be pushing it that way, and that's never going to work. It's the same with producers. So you need to just make sure you're on the same page, I think.
That's exactly it. Beautifully put. Okay, so we'll delve into a little bit, maybe more towards the creative process of how your bands have worked in the past. Like, so who does what, and maybe what does each member contribute?
Well, you have to know what you want, and they have to know what you want. Do you know what I mean? There has to be an understanding. And two, this is what bands always do when they get a manager or a label, is they go, oh, okay, I've got a manager or I've got a label, I don't need to do any work anymore. And that's like, it's so far from the truth. It's like, it's almost like you should think of it as, okay, now you've got a manager, now you've got a label, that's going to facilitate me to have a bigger reach and to do things that I couldn't do before. Yeah, I mean, again, totally varies band to band, but and Catholic Action, I would generally, you know, write the lyrics, and I would produce the records. You know, I would do a lot of recording. There was Catholic Action was kind of like, sometimes it was kind of a grey area between a sort of fully solo project and a band thing. Like, I feel like when you listen to our albums, you can kind of tell the songs that are more band based and some of the songs that are more like studio based. But yeah, so actually, well, a good way of, we would divvy it up in the sense that, like, I would kind of tend to work on the the production stuff and the music, like the artistic side of stuff. I would kind of have the final say on, be it like artwork and videos and you know, the production of the actual records themselves. Whereas a lot of the other band members, like Jamie, our bass player, for instance, he would deal with all the logistics, stuff like that. Like, he kind of enjoyed like booking all the tour things. Like, he didn't book the tours, but like all the logistics of that, like the vans and the hotels and all this stuff, he would kind of deal with flights and things like that. He would deal with that. You know, so we'd all kind of do things in different ways. Like the other band I was in, Casual Sex, when I played drums, the lead singer Sam, he kind of did what I did in Catholic Action, but there was much more musical input from the rest of us. I don't know, it's just it's different for every band. It really depends on the project. If it's like a, you know, like a songwriter bringing a sort of finished song into like a backing band, or if it's kind of the way Catholic Action would be, is I'd bring a sort of idea and I'd bring a song in, but then the other guys would like reinterpret that musically, put their own spin on it, and then I would record that, and that would be the Catholic Action song or the sound or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, here's this maybe the slightly contentious question, and if you're up for maybe discussing it a little bit. So how, band-wise, how would you decide the PRS/money splits?
Well, we just did it so that, and again, every band's different. So with Catholic Action, the way we did it was music was 50% and lyrics were 50%. So and I wrote the lyrics for most of the songs, so there would be that, and then the music would be split 4 ways if we did that. Whereas Casual Sex, we just split everything equally. Really depends on, the important thing is you like need to talk about it. Like, just, it's not the most comfortable. Well, I mean, you know, it just depends on your relationship with your band members, really. But it's just important, like, just get it out the way early. Do you know what I mean? Get out of the way, get it out in the open, and be honest about it, and just try not to be egotistical about it. Just be honest and get something that everyone's happy with, because otherwise it's going to come back and bite you, especially as soon as money gets involved. If these things are not tied down, like, you don't want to have to stress about that stuff. Just deal with it right away and get it in writing, and I'll sign it, and then that's it. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It can be a difficult conversation to have, but it's very much like ripping off the band-aid. You do it at the start, and then you avoid so many problems later on, because everyone knows exactly where everyone stands.
Yeah, because it's going to end up in an argument otherwise. You know, you don't want to have to, you know, can you imagine the nightmare of like making an album and then trying to decide who gets what after the album's finished? Like, everyone's gonna fall out, you know?
Oh my God. Like, that would keep me up at night, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then can you imagine the guilt if you took more than, you know, other people? And then obviously another thing is, like, whenever you're working with someone that intimately, you know them on a personal level as well. And
yeah, it can get pretty messy. So it's just, it's so important, just sit and chat about it and be honest, you know? And just make sure everyone's comfortable with what they're getting, you know? You know, be honest about what you contribute and what you don't contribute, basically. That's the only way to do it. but again, there's not really any set rule of thumb as to how you
No.
should do it. It really is dependent on every band and every band's process, you know. So we would kind of the way like again like the way we would do it like split lyrics 50% and music would be split 50%, but obviously, and that was just the rule. So even if one of the band members wrote lyrics for a song, then they would get that big share. So we just had a sort of rule, and no matter like however the song worked out, it would just the rule would apply to it, and then that would be it. It'd be, you know, simple.
Okay, so we'll delve into more towards your producer side, because I had a few questions about how does it work in the studio of a producer. So what is your work process for maybe working on a track versus an album, either yourself as an artist from your own experience and also as a producer working with a client?
Okay.
Even just basic level. Like what happens when someone comes into the studio with you?
Okay. Well, I like to just I'll maybe chat a bit. I like to communicate with whoever I'm working with. So let's say I'm producing a track for someone. I would probably talk to them a good few months in advance, figure out what it is they actually want to do, figure out if I'm the best person to work on it. Because that's another thing as well. It's like you should really try as far as possible to work on things that you're passionate about. That, and I know that's like that's just it's not always possible. Sometimes you just have to pay the rent, especially, you know, if you're sort of making your name or getting more known. But it's like you should as far as possible work on things that you're passionate about, because there's nothing worse than as an artist, and I have experienced this, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to get into recording in the first place is, you know, you go into a studio and there's like the stereotypically like grumpy engineer who just can't be bothered and obviously hates your band, and it just ends up this horrible experience, and it doesn't need to be like that, you know. It really doesn't need to be like that. What happens when, you know, a band comes in and they work with someone that's interested in what they're doing, everyone like feeds off of each other, and it just, you know, everyone's sparking everyone else's ideas and imagination, and the project gets so much better because of that. So back to my point, I always kind of have a chat with bands beforehand, and I'll ask them to send me demos of what they've got. I mean, even if they only want to do one song, I'll probably say like send me demos for like 4 or 5 songs, and we'll pick the best one, and we'll pick one that we're both passionate about and that I feel is the strongest track. Because that's the important thing as well, is like as a producer, it's really important to remember that your production's only going to be as good as the song in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter. I can do all sorts of fancy tricks and make it sound sonically really great or well mixed or whatever, but if the song's not good, it's not going to connect with people. So it's important to, as a producer, to like find good songs first of all that you're passionate about, and work those up. So after, you know, if we've figured all that out and we're set on the song we're going to do, we're both really into it, I'll like get the artist to maybe, you know, we'll just probably just hang out. We'll maybe go for a coffee, and I'll get them to make me a playlist of stuff that they really like, and I'll maybe make them a playlist in response to that of stuff that maybe, you know, it could go like this or that, you know, just to give them some ideas of maybe what we could do. And then, yeah, I'll maybe do some, maybe before that, before we go into the studio again, would maybe do some pre-production in a rehearsal room. Just make sure that if it was like a band recording, just make sure that the arrangement's sort of there. Everyone's kind of knowing what they're doing. The structure of the song is as like effective as it can be. Everyone's rehearsed, you know, so that, because going into recording studios can be, you know, depending on the studio, it can be pretty expensive. So you don't want to waste your time when you're there. You want to make the best use of it. So the more work you do before you go in, the better. So that when we do get to the actual studio stage, everyone's excited, everyone knows what they're doing. It just flows, you know. And when it flows and when people are having a good time, that's generally when you get the best results, you know.
That's exactly it. I remember a really interesting thing that you told my band when we went into the studio with you, it was a few years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was, again, going back to you had a conversation with all of us, and it was the really sort of interesting thing that you said that, like, and made clear that it was about getting the job done to the best ability. So say if someone is maybe struggling in the studio, just that they're having an off day when whatever they're playing, but someone else can step in to play whatever needs to be played. And
Yeah,
you kind of said that, like, it's important for us to maybe do that if there is a situation like that. It's a really interesting thing that you brought up, and not that maybe we didn't really all sort of consider it, you know, because bands were really excited to be in the studio for the first time, but you really made this sort of point that it was really important to, you know, step out of our egos within that moment, and it was more about, you know, creating something really good all together.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I always try and get bands to focus on this because it's really easy to, you know, do that. Say if you're to just really focus on your part, and yeah, make your part as good as it can be, but your part without the rest of the song is kind of meaningless. So I think if the whole band like focuses on making this song as good as it can be, regardless of their parts and who plays what. And this is just my approach. Not everyone does this, but I just you know, it's just that's the important thing. The important thing is making the song the best it can be. Do you know what I mean? Because if the song doesn't get finished because the guitar player is not really rehearsed his part and can't really play it, then nothing's going to happen. Whereas if we, you know, go, well, the rhythm guitar player can play the part really well. Why don't they just play it and we finish the song and you can do something else? Because the band, you're all going to benefit from this song being A, finished, and B, better than it would have been. You know,
Yeah.
and again, that's a really difficult conversation to have, and it's not everyone's comfortable doing that, and that's fair enough. Like that's fair enough. There are no hard and fast rules when you're making art, really. It's just there are some general guidelines that might help, but I definitely think that, you know, it's just focusing the team on everything. It's like it's, you know, like again talking about when we spoke about, you know, good management or a good producer, it's like everyone's pulling in the same direction, everyone has the same goal, the same definition of that goal. You know, be that from band members right up to producer and management and label. Like if everyone's on the same team pushing in the same direction, then you're going to get things done and it's going to be effective. Whereas if everyone's kind of unfocused and has their own goals in mind, it's not going to, you know, sometimes things can grind to a halt. In saying that though, like sometimes the tension between, you know, band members or songwriters can make really good art as well. You know, like think about the tension between like Paul McCartney and John Lennon in the studio, or Joe Strummer
Yeah.
and Mick Jones
Yeah.
and Flash. It's like that kind of threw up some really interesting things because of the way they worked together. But again, it's just all, it really, as a producer as well, it really depends on the band you're working with, and it depends on the projects. The approach you take depends on the personalities of band members and what they're trying to get done. But again, like it's just a sort of generally good rule to like leave your ego at the door and focus on like making the best recording you can make or the most interesting and exciting song that you can make, you know. And it doesn't matter how you get there, it's all that matters is you get there.
That's exactly it.
Cool.
So let's go back to maybe more of a basic level. So working as a producer, well, how do you go about securing clients for music work?
Believe it or not, I use the very professional app called Instagram, and people DM me or DM me. I'm really like, I need to really. I've been very, very lucky that it's for me. It's been mostly word of mouth. Like I think
Yeah.
having being in a band or whatever that people know about me, and being known like publicly as a producer, from doing other bands' singles and other bands' albums and stuff, people just come to you. So generally people just DM me, but it's probably would be better for me and easier because a lot of people DM me and go, I'm really sorry for DMing you, but you didn't have a website and you didn't have an email address to get in touch. So, I'm really sorry. I'm like, no, this is how this is how I want people to get in touch with me. It's really easy. Yeah, I'd do that. When I was starting out, I would just go to gigs, and I would go to gigs at like small venues and just find bands that I like and like just go up to them and chat, because they're just the the other thing is, if you're wanting to get into production stuff, aside from the fact that you should just try and do it as much as you possibly can, is that you have to remember that people in bands, they're just people like you. They just love records, and they almost definitely want to. Well, I enjoy chatting to anybody and everybody about anything to do with music or recording. So a lot of the times, I would just go to gigs, and like I would find bands that I like local bands, and I would just go up to them and be like, oh, I thought that was really cool. I record bands, by the way. Like if you're ever looking, to record a demo or an EP, here's my email address. Look me up, and then eventually, when a couple of bands, convinced a couple of bands to do that, and if it goes well and that band, gets a review or something, and in the review they mention your name or whatever, then you can go, oh, the next time you go to a gig, you can go, hey, I record, find a band you like, you go up to them, you're like, hey, I record bands. I recorded the single by, such and such. It was just out. And then they would go, oh, cool, I like that single. Let's do it. And then you just kind of, it just goes on and on like that. But again, you need to sort of put yourself out there and make it happen. It's not gonna, until you're like a big name that people are interested in, you have to make it happen for yourself. You need to just go out and find people and be brave and message people and go up and chat to people, but just be friendly, and because the artists aren't really going to bite, and if they are going to bite, then
Don't work with them.
just forget about them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
That's
yeah,
exactly it. Yeah.
yeah. I've never, ever, ever, ever worked with a band that I've fallen out with ever. So, but like, and I've never spoken to a band at a gig who've been rude ever. You get bands that maybe are busy and maybe don't have the time, but no one's ever been rude or unpleasant or told me to get lost. It's never happened. People are always kind of flattered that you're interested in working with them. So just go for it.
God, yeah, that's a general rule of thumb that maybe a lot of people don't actually know. Don't ever speak to a band when they're packing their stuff away and they seem as though they're in a rush and they're busy.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's kind of exactly what I did. Or they're packing the guitars up at like Sleazy's or whatever, and I'll be like, hey, that was really cool. God, yeah, I record bands. Here's my email address. Like,
and that
be like
worked.
go up to the merch table or something. But like, even though they might look busy and be trying to look really cool, they're just as geeky as you are, and they're just really flattered because someone's came up to them and said they stuff. So
that does work. In fact,
yep.
Prove me wrong.
100%. That's exactly what
works. Right, here is the fun question. So what are some of your I can't believe this is my job music opportunities you've had, just in general, bands, any sort of cool stories?
Yeah, I mean, just like there's quite a few. I mean, just like the one I told you there, like before we started recording, like the last gig we played was with the Dead Kennedys at a sold out venue in Philadelphia. But that sounds like, if I'm saying, because I loved that band when I was younger and I started learning guitar, I would like learn their songs on guitar, and to have their guitar player be like I really like your band. Come and play with us again. You know, it's insane. And, you know, to be in another country, to be in America, in a big city, and to like see your name up on the like billboard thing outside the venue below like the Dead Kennedys, or, you know, a band like that, or like Teenage Fan Club or something. It's nuts. Or Franz Ferdinand, or, you know, we played with Franz Ferdinand and Sparks at the Barrowlands. That was quite a good one because I love Sparks,
Yeah.
and I like Franz Ferdinand too. And to be standing, you know, that was I really like. I used to joke because my parents used to always say, "Oh, you know, how come you never invite us to your gigs?" You know, because yeah, I'm like a teenager, I'm in my early 20s. I'm like, I'm trying to be cool, mom. Like that's why I'm not inviting you to the gig. You know. So, but then I used to always joke. I'd be like, well, I'll invite you to a gig when we play the Barrowlands. And I did. And it was so nice to find,
Oh, yeah.
right, playing the Barrowlands, come on, please come. And I mean, obviously they came to other gigs, of course they did, but you know, that was a really cool moment. And especially there was one point in that gig when Franz Ferdinand and Sparks were on stage, and I was standing just off to the side of the stage at the Barrowlands, like behind Ron Mail, you know, the kind of keyboard player that sort of really scare kids in the 70s. Apparently, according to my parents, people used to be really scared of him because he was quite creepy looking. Like deliberately, he would like
Yeah.
make himself look creepy. So, and I was standing like just a few feet from him, and just as they started playing that really famous song, "This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us," at the Barrowlands, it was sold out, and just like to see him play that bit, standing behind him, one of my favorite bands ever, playing one of my favorite songs ever in a really legendary venue that was sold out, and the lights come on and you just see the crowd going nuts. It was like, that was a real like, oh, I'm doing music. This is insane. This is like
Yeah.
my job, you know. Again, well, just, you know, even just recording people like every day. I mean, I try and be really grateful for it, be really conscious of the fact that I'm really lucky to be able to do this, because, and that I should keep working hard at it and learning and being positive about it. I never ever want to become jaded uh, by it, by recording. And I don't think I ever will be. You know, I don't see myself being like that again, because it's a thing that is, it's art. It comes from passion. You know, and the people that work on it should be passionate about it too. Um, you know, so yeah, I'm just pretty grateful to be able to get up every day and go into a recording studio and to make music, and to actually be able to pay my rent with it. Like I can't, like, it still seems really weird to me. It still seems like I definitely have a bit of like imposter syndrome type thing. I still kind of feel like I don't know how I'm doing. I don't know how I'm doing this, or I don't know how this has ended up my job, but it has, you know, and I'm really really lucky for that. So yeah,
Someone's got to fill that job role. So
yeah,
why not you?
I know, mad.
Um, yeah. So obviously we've went through a hard year with our industry. Obviously at the time of filming this, we are in April 2021. So how has COVID-19 affected you within your line of work?
Well, um, I mean, first, well, we came back. Like we came back. We had to come back from a tour in the US early. Like I said, that was the last gig. We played the one I was talking about a minute ago with the Dead Kennedys. We had to literally escape New York the next day and come home. We were meant to be playing a couple of festivals in South by Southwest. I was going to do some solo shows. He's like, we had to come back. Our album came out. Our album came out like a week after lockdown. Our second album came out, which was a bit mad. But I mean, what can you do? You just have to. So we've not been able to play any gigs to support our second album, which is a shame. But yeah, the first few months were weird. I sort of I mean, I didn't really work from like March to July. Thankfully, I qualified for the self-employed grant, so that kind of tided me over. And fortunately, I was able to do some work remotely, just mixing records for people.
Mm-hmm.
And also I just wrote, like, I was like, this is a mad opportunity. I'm so lucky that I have roof over my head and that I'm not sick and that I've managed to get this grant. So I'm just going to use it. I'm just going to write some stuff that's been sort of bugging me for a while. So wrote that solo record the first few months of lockdown, and then from July I've been kind of just back in recording with masks on, socially distant stuff. But I mean, I'm just really grateful that people are still wanting to record. I mean, a few other sound engineers and producers that I'm friends with in Glasgow, we were all chatting and we were kind of like, are we going to have a job in like 6 months' time? Like, surely there's no gigs or bands going to want to and B, afford to be able to record. But it's been, honestly, touch wood, I've been really busy since July of 2020. People have just been like kicking the doors down, trying to get into record. So it gives me a lot of hope. Like, everything's taken a hit and nothing stops, but the music will just it's never going to stop.
Still going. I mean, put it into perspective, you've had time to sit and write music, and so has everyone else.
Exactly, yeah.
What else were we meant to do with ourselves? So everyone's desperate to go in and record what they've done.
Yeah, exactly. So it just gives me a lot of hope, actually. It's kind of kept me going. It's like, it's going to come back. It's just have to be patient and be sensible and wait it out. That's it. Like, use it as an opportunity to just try and put as positive a spin on it as you can. It's difficult and it's scary, but if you have a roof over your head and B, like, you're not sick, and if then you should count your blessings and make the most of it, I guess.
It's just, in closing, do you have any general tips for young cats wanting to do stuff in the industry / wanting to get into what you have do or have done?
Yeah, I would really just do it for yourself as much as you can. Like, education and all that's really important and good. I mean, formal education, but really, honestly, like, you need to just get out there as much as you can and kind of make it happen for yourself. I think that's the thing. No one's ever going to tell you, okay, now you're a sound engineer or whatever. You just have to do it, and then you become one or whatever over time. Just like, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Just go for it. There's really, honestly, nothing to lose. Like I said, literally just going up and talking to bands and venues and stuff that I like. I've just never, no one's ever been rude. No one's ever told me, yeah, okay, there'll be some bands that you won't end up working with for one reason or another, and that's fine, but don't let anything stop you. Just make it happen for yourself, basically, and stay positive and stay passionate. It's not something that you should do if you're not passionate about it. I think don't do it for the clout or whatever. Do it because you love making art and do it because you want to do it, basically. Yeah.